when the output per labor hour is about productivity. Productivity is simply output divided by input. So here the input is labor hour. Output per labor hour is simply the productivity. It's simply the productivity. So when productivity is high, cost is low. When productivity is high, cost is low. So in this case, in wine production, UK has the highest productivity. UK has the highest productivity because UK can produce 15 bottles using 1 hour, but US can produce only 5 bottles. So the productivity is high in the UK. Productivity is the highest in the UK. So in the UK, cost is the least. Cost is the least because when productivity is the highest, cost is the least. Similarly, in cloth production, using 1 hour of labor, US can produce 20 yards, UK can produce 10 yards. So the productivity is the highest in the US. So similarly, the cost is the least in the US. Cost is the least in the US. Absolute advantage is where, absolute advantage is there when a country can produce a specific good with the least cost. So in wine production, the cost is the least in the UK. So UK has the absolute advantage in wine production. In cloth production, the least cost is there with the US. So the absolute advantage in producing cloth is there with the US compared to UK. The same thing can be shown in this way. In the previous table, it was about output per labor hour. Here I have taken time required to produce 1 unit of output. That is the reciprocal of productivity. Here, it's output divided by 1 hour of labor. In this table, we have labor time divided by number of units produced within 1 labor hour. So this is, in this table we see that US can produce 5 bottles within 1 hour. In this table, it's 1 divided by 5 multiplied by 60 minutes. So the answer is 12 minutes. To produce 1 wine bottle, it requires only 12 minutes. It requires 12 minutes in the US. Similarly, according to this table, to produce 15 wine bottles, it takes 1 labor hour. To produce 1 wine bottle, it requires 4 minutes. It requires 4 minutes in the UK. That is 1 divided by 15 multiplied by 60 minutes. 1 divided by 15 multiplied by 60 minutes. So it requires 4 minutes to produce 1 wine bottle in the UK. Similarly, when it comes to the cloth production, to produce 1 yard of cloth, it requires 3 minutes. We calculated it by dividing 1 over 20 multiplied by 60. That is 3 minutes. In the UK, to produce 1 yard of cloth, it requires 6 minutes. We got that number 1 over 10 multiplied by 60. 1 over 10 multiplied by 60. So this data show time required to produce a unit of output. When time is the least, cost is the least. So in wine production, UK has the least cost, so it has the absolute advantage in producing wine compared to the US. In cloth production, the least time is with the US. So the US has the absolute advantage compared to UK in producing cloth. Nations can concentrate their production on the goods that they can make the most cheaply. Therefore, cost differences among nations lead to international trade. So, because of absolute advantage, UK can specialize in wine production. Because of absolute advantage, US can specialize in cloth production. Then there will be an excess production. So UK specializes in wine production. Since they specialize in wine production, there will be some excess wine. UK can send that excess wine to the US. UK can send that excess amount of wine to the US. Similarly, US can specialize in cloth production. Since they are specialized in cloth production, there will be some excess cloth at the end of the day. So the US can send their excess cloth to the UK. So because of absolute advantage, each country specializes in a specific good, and because of specialization, there will be some excess production. That excess production can be exchanged between the countries. That is how international trade happen as a result of absolute advantage. Country can specialize in a good which they can produce at the least cost. They can export the excess production to the other country and import the goods which they can't produce at the least cost. Productivities of factored inputs represent the major determinant of production cost. Such productivities are based on natural advantage and acquired advantage. So here, the UK can produce wine with the least cost. US can produce the cloth with the least cost. They can produce each commodity with the least cost because of two reasons. One can be due to natural advantages, and the other advantages can come from acquired advantages. So sometimes the UK the country has the absolute advantage in wine production. Than in the US, and also mineral wealth, that means natural resources. Yes, the grapes cultivation in the UK may be highly productive than in the grapes production in US. So natural advantages can cause the least cost. UK can produce wine with the least cost because of natural advantages like the climate and other natural resources. Also, UK can produce wine with the least cost maybe due to acquired advantages. Sometimes there will be a stock of skilled labor in producing wine rather than in the US. UK labor force may be highly skilled in wine production than in the labor force in the US. So acquired advantages also can cause least cost production. So to have least cost production, there are two reasons: natural advantages, which are factors like climate and natural resources, and also least cost advantages can come from acquired advantages, for example, skilled laborers and specialized techniques. That is how least cost advantages come. Least cost advantages exist in countries in producing a specific product. That is about absolute advantage. Absolute advantage has some weakness. It has some weakness. Absolute advantage compares the least cost. Sometimes there may be a situation where one country is producing both products with the least cost. If the US can produce both wine and cloth at the least cost, will there be international trade? No. On the other hand, if UK can produce both wine and cloth at the least cost, will there be any international trade? No. In absolute advantage, it can happen. It can happen. What is possible is one country can produce both products with the least cost. That situation can occur when we talk about absolute advantage. According to absolute advantage, mutually beneficial trade requires each nation to be the least cost producer of at least one good that it can export to its trading partner. So to have a mutually beneficial trade, each nation should have a product which can be produced at the least cost. So here it is fine. US has the least cost advantage over the clothes. UK has the least cost advantage over wine. So that is possible. Then mutually beneficial trade can happen between the UK and US. But what if a nation is more efficient than its trading partner in production of all goods? What happens if US is the least cost producer in both wine and cloth? Then there won't be any international trade. Similarly, if the UK is the least cost producer of both wine and cloth, again, there won't be any international trade. Comparative advantage addresses this weakness of absolute advantage principle, and it shows that mutually beneficial trade can occur whether or not countries have any absolute advantage. So even when a country does not have any absolute advantage over the production of a specific good, two countries can enter into mutually beneficial trade according to the comparative advantage principle. Comparative advantage principle emphasizes comparative or relative cost differences. Here it's about cost differences in countries, within each country, not between countries. So in comparative advantage, we are going to compare cost differences between countries. So comparative advantage will happen, it will exist with the least opportunity cost. In absolute advantage, our focus was on least cost, the least cost. The country which can produce the good with the least cost has an absolute advantage compared to the other countries. That is what we focused on in absolute advantage. It's about the least cost. In comparative advantage, our focus is on the least opportunity cost, the lowest opportunity cost, not the cost. It's about the opportunity cost. Let's see how to calculate the opportunity cost under comparative advantage. Before that, consider this example. Suppose that the US worker can produce 50 shirts and 200 bushels of wheat per day. A Chinese worker can produce only 25 shirts and 50 bushels of wheat per day. Let's take this data into a table. Let's organize this information in a table as we show in the previous slides. Arrange them in a table. It's about output per unit of labor or unit of worker. We have two countries and two products, shirts and wheat. The two countries are the US and China. Using one worker, with one worker, US can produce 50 shirts and 200 bushels of wheat. Using one worker, with one worker, China can produce 25 shirts and 50 bushels of wheat. So find where the absolute advantage is in producing shirt and wheat. Which country has the absolute advantage? Find. Is it US or China or only one country? This is about what? Productivity. This is about productivity. Cost is the least when the productivity is the highest. So find where the productivity is the highest under each commodity, under each product. Productivity is the highest in producing shirts in the US. So that is where the cost is the least. Least cost is there with the US in producing shirts. And come to wine production, where the productivity is the highest. Productivity is the highest with the US. That is where the cost is the least. So the US has the absolute advantage in producing shirts. The US has the absolute advantage in producing wine. So in both commodities, US has the absolute advantage compared to China. So there is no any room for international trade. Because US has the absolute advantage in both production. US has to specialize in both production. China does not want to specialize in any production, any commodity, because they don't have any absolute advantage either in shirt or wheat. Therefore, there is no change. There is no international trade. There won't be any mutually beneficial trade exist between the US and China. This is why absolute advantage has a weakness. It has a weakness. Sometimes absolute advantage fails to explain. Sometimes absolute advantage fails to explain international trade. That is why we introduce the comparative advantage concept. Absolute advantage was introduced by the Adam Smith. Comparative advantage was introduced by David Ricardo. So let's see. Absolute advantage was about least cost. Comparative advantage is about the least opportunity cost. So let's see how to calculate the opportunity cost of producing each commodity. What is the opportunity cost of producing one shirt? What is in the US? What is the opportunity cost of producing one bushel of wheat in the US? What is the opportunity cost of producing one shirt in China? What is the opportunity cost of producing one bushel of wheat in China? So those are the values now we are going to calculate. Opportunity cost of producing one shirt in the US. In terms of bushels of wheat. And the opportunity cost of producing one shirt in China in terms of bushels of wheat. The opportunity cost of producing one bushel of wheat in terms of shirts. The opportunity cost of producing one bushel of wheat in terms of shirts. So these are the numbers we are going to find now. We are going to find. That is what we call the opportunity cost. To produce 1 unit of shirt, US has to sacrifice this much of bushels of wheat. To produce 1 bushel of wheat, the US has to sacrifice this much of shirts. Similarly, to produce 1 unit of shirt, to produce 1 shirt, China has to sacrifice this much amount of bushels of wheat. To produce 1 wheat of bushel, 1 bushel of wheat, China has to sacrifice this amount of shirts. That is what do we identify by the opportunity cost. These numbers will show the opportunity cost of producing each commodity. These are the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit of shirt. These are the opportunity cost of producing 1 bushel of wheat in 2 countries. US can either produce 50 shirts or 200 bushels of wheat with 1 worker. With 1 worker, US can produce either 50 shirts or 200 bushels of wheat. With 1 worker, China can produce 50 shirts or 50 bushels of wheat. So to produce 1 shirt, how much of wheat has to be sacrificed? How much of bushels of wheat has to be sacrificed by US? 50, 200. To produce one, the US has to sacrifice 4 bushels of wheat. With one worker, US can produce either 50 shirts or 200 bushels of wheat. So to produce 1 shirt, how much the US has to sacrifice in terms of bushels of wheat? It's 4. 50 shirts hari or 200 bushels produce කරන්න පුළුවන්. එක ෂර්ට් එකක් produce කරන්න එක ෂර්ට් එකක් නම් produce කරන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ bushels 4ක් produce කරනවා. එකක් produce කරන්න 4ක් sacrifice කරන්න ඕනේ. To produce 1 shirt, the US has to sacrifice 4 bushels of wheat. Similarly here, with 1 worker, China can produce 25 shirts or 50 bushels of wheat. So with 1 shirt, it's 2 bushels of wheat. So to produce 1 shirt, China has to sacrifice 2 bushels of wheat. 2 bushels of wheat. So it is easier if you understand in this way. Opportunity cost. I will introduce a formula to calculate opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is sacrificed. What is sacrificed? What is gain? What is gain? Keep this formula in mind. Opportunity cost is what is sacrificed divided by what is gained. What is sacrificed divided by what is gained. The US can produce either 50 shirts or 200 bushels of wheat. If the US produces shirts only, how much the US has to sacrifice? 200 units of bushels of wheat. That is the amount of wheat sacrifice. That is what sacrifice. That is what is sacrifice. What is the gain? 50 shirts. 50 shirts. So 200 divided by 50 is 4. It's 4. The same way, China can produce 25 shirts or 25 shirts or 50 bushels of wheat. If China decides to produce shirts only, that is the amount gained. That is the amount gained. If China decides to produce shirts only, they sacrifice 50 bushels of wheat. So amount sacrificed is 50. So 50 divided by 25, the answer is 2. That is why we have the 2 here. Clear? So it is easy if you remember this formula. Amount sacrificed, what is sacrificed divided by what is gained. So in the same way, US can produce either 50 shirts or 200 bushels of wheat. If the US decides to produce wheat only, that is the gain. Wheat only. What they have to sacrifice? They have to sacrifice the production of shirts. How much they sacrifice? 50 shirts. So 50 divided by 200, the answer is 0.4. Here the answer is 0.4. 0.4. The opportunity cost of producing 1 bushel of wheat is 0.4 units of shirts. 0.4 units of shirts. And again, similarly, in the case of China can produce 25 units of shirts or 50 bushels of wheat. If China decides to produce wheat only, that is the gain, 50 is the gain, how much they have to sacrifice? They have to sacrifice 25 shirts. So 25 divided by 50, 0.5. Here the number you have to take is 0.5. One bushel of wheat, the opportunity cost is 0.5 units of shirt. The opportunity cost of 1 bushel of wheat is 0.5 units of shirt in China. So now we know the opportunity costs of each product in the two countries. The opportunity cost of producing 1 shirt in the US is 4 bushels of wheat. The opportunity cost of producing 1 bushel of wheat in the US is 0.4 units of shirt. The opportunity cost of producing 1 shirt in China is 2 bushels of wheat. The opportunity cost of producing 1 bushel of wheat in China is 0.5 units of shirt. Simply you can understand in this way as well. The cost of 1 shirt is 4 bushels of wheat. The cost of 1 shirt is 2 bushels of wheat. The cost of 1 bushel of wheat is 0.4 units of shirt. The cost of 1 bushel of wheat is 0.5 units of shirt. That is also possible rather than considering it as the opportunity cost. You can simply tell it's the cost. It implies that it is the opportunity cost. So where the opportunity cost is the least? In shirt production. In shirt production, where the opportunity cost is the least? In shirt production, the opportunity cost is the least in China. Here the opportunity cost of producing one shirt is 4. Here the opportunity cost of producing one shirt is 2. The least opportunity cost is there with China in producing shirts. Where is the least opportunity cost in producing one bushel of wheat? It's here. In wheat production, the least opportunity cost is there with the US. So China should specialize in shirts. The US should specialize in wheat production. So even though the absolute advantage did not provide any evidence for international trade, because the absolute advantage was with the US in both shirt and wheat production. But when it comes to comparative advantage, yes, we have a base for international trade. US can specialize in wheat production. China can specialize in the shirt production. So after specialization, there will be some excess. After specialization, there will be some excess production. There will be an excess production of wheat in the US. There will be an excess production of shirts in China. So US and China can exchange those products. China can send excess shirts to the US. US can send excess wheat to China. Then there will be a mutual international trade, mutually beneficial international trade will be there. So absolute advantage is about the least cost. Comparative advantage is about the least opportunity cost. Consider this example as well. Here, it's about the productivity. Output per unit of work. It's about the productivity. Output per unit of work. Here, again, output per unit of input. Input is the labor. Output per labor hour. Calculate the productivities. Calculate the opportunity costs. Before that, compare the absolute advantage. Find who has the absolute advantage. This is about productivity data, output per labor, and find where the productivity is the highest. When the productivity is the highest, cost is the least. So the country that can produce a product with the least cost has an absolute advantage. So with this data, with this information, find who has the absolute advantage in radio production and wheat production. You have to find the least cost producer, whether it is India or Sri Lanka. The productivity is the highest in radio production with India or Sri Lanka. With India, because India can produce 3 radios with 1 labor input, with 1 labor hour. But Sri Lanka can produce only 2 radios. So the absolute advantage in radio production is with India. When it comes to wheat production, the productivity is the highest in India because they can produce 12 bushels of wheat with 1 labor hour. Sri Lanka can produce only 4 bushels of wheat with 1 labor hour. So the productivity is the highest in wheat production in India. Since the productivity is the highest, cost will be the least. So India will be the least cost producer in wheat. Therefore, absolute advantage in wheat production will be there with India. So the absolute advantage in producing both radio and wheat are there with India. Sri Lanka does not have any absolute advantage. Sri Lanka does not have any absolute advantage. So there is no basis for international trade according to the absolute advantage principle. And then calculate the opportunity costs and find which country has the comparative advantage in production of each commodity. You have to find the opportunity cost in the same way as I did on the board. So the formula for opportunity cost is what is sacrificed and what is gained. The opportunity cost of producing one radio is 4 bushels of wheat in India. The opportunity cost of producing one radio is 2 bushels of wheat in Sri Lanka. These are the opportunity costs. The opportunity cost of radio production is the lowest in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka should specialize in radio production. And the opportunity cost of producing wheat is the lowest in India. So India should specialize in wheat production. Wheat production. This table mentions data, productivity data. This table shows productivity data, output per labor. The same information, but in this table we have time required to produce 1 unit of output. 1 unit of output. That is the reciprocal of this. The reciprocal of this. Within 1 hour, India can produce 3 radios. Within 1 labor hour, India can produce 3 radios. So to produce one radio, India needs how much of time? 1/3 multiplied by 60. 1/3 multiplied by 60. That is 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Similarly, you have to take the reciprocal. By taking the reciprocal, you will receive the time in hours. So to convert the time in hours into minutes, you have to multiply the reciprocal by 60. The same information but in a different format. You will be able to find the opportunity cost in this format as well. In this format as well. So here you can't follow that formula, what is sacrifice divided by what is gain. Instead, so the easiest way is to divide the time of producing one radio by the time of producing one bushel of wheat. This time indicates the cost. The time directly indicates the cost. When time spent to produce 1 unit of output is high, cost is also high. When time it takes to produce 1 unit of output, when it is high, cost is also high. Time taken to produce 1 unit of output When the time is high, indicates cost is also high. Cost of producing 1 unit of output is also high. So here simply the opportunity cost is the cost. Opportunity cost is the cost. So we have the cost data. These are the cost data. Time is the cost. Time is the direct indicator of the cost. So this is the cost of producing 1 unit of labor. Sorry, 1 unit of radio. This is the cost of producing 1 unit of radio in Sri Lanka. This is the cost of producing 1 bushel of wheat in India. This is the cost of producing 1 bushel of wheat in Sri Lanka. So simply you can divide 20 by 5 to find the opportunity cost of producing 1 radio in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka. You can divide 30 by 15 to find the opportunity cost of producing 1 radio in India. Here, to find the opportunity cost of producing 1 bushel of wheat, you can divide 5 by 20 in Sri Lanka. To find the opportunity cost of producing 1 wheat, you can divide 15 by 30 in India. So divide the time of producing 1 radio by the time of producing 1 bushel. That will give directly the opportunity cost of producing 1 radio. 4. Here is 2. Here is 0.4. Here is 0.5. To produce 1 unit of radio, it takes 20 minutes. So it's the cost. To produce 1 wheat, it costs 5 minutes. So it is the cost. So divide the cost of producing radio by cost of producing wheat, then that will be the cost of producing 1 radio in terms of wheat. Cost of producing 1 radio in terms of wheat. That is the opportunity cost. That is the opportunity cost. Cost of producing something in terms of another thing is the opportunity cost. So to produce 1 radio, it takes 20 minutes. Using 20 minutes, we can produce 4 wheat. That means to produce 1 radio, it takes 4 wheat. To produce 1 radio, we have to sacrifice 4 wheat, 4 bushels of wheat. It's clear from this picture. It takes 20 minutes. It takes 20 minutes to produce radio. Using the given time, 20 minutes, we can produce 4 wheat, 4 bushels of wheat. In other words, to produce 1 radio, we have to sacrifice 4 bushels of wheat. That is the idea behind this. Here, to produce 1 wheat, it takes 5 minutes. To produce 1 wheat, it takes 5 minutes. To produce 1 radio, it takes 20 minutes. So to produce 1 wheat, how much they have to sacrifice? It's only sorry, yes, 520, 524. It requires only 1/4 of radio. That is, sorry, it requires to produce. This is about wheat, right? To produce 1 bushel of wheat, it requires 5 minutes. To produce one radio, it requires 20 minutes. The opportunity cost of to produce one beat, yes, it's one fourth. To produce one beat, India should sacrifice one fourth of radio. This is 5 divided by 21. 1 divided by it should be 0.25, right? Sorry, this number is correct. It is not 0.4, it should be 0.25. 0.25. Did I mention it 0.4 earlier? No, this is the first time I mentioned it. This is the first time I made this mistake. It should be 0.25. So, produce one beat, India should sacrifice one fourth of radio, that is 0.25 radio. Okay, don't make it so complex. This is the simple way. If you are given productivity data, output per labor unit, you have to follow the formula amount sacrificed divided by amount gained. If you are given productivity data, you have to divide what is sacrificed by what is gained. Then India can produce either 3 radios or 12 bushels of wheat. If India chooses to produce radio, they sacrifice 12 bushels of wheat. So the amount sacrificed is 12, amount gained is 3, then it is 12 divided by 3. One radio's opportunity cost is 4 wheat. So that is the way you have to find opportunity cost if the productivity data is given. And if the time required to produce unit of output data is given, then you have to divide the cost of producing radio by cost of producing bushel. Cost is simply the time. You have to directly divide the time of producing radio by time of producing wheat. Then it's 20 divided by 5. That means to produce one radio, India should sacrifice 4 units of wheat. So make it simple like that. Since the data are the same in both tables, but only the format is different, the opportunity cost data, the opportunity cost calculations are identical in both tables. One radio, 4 wheat, 1 wheat, 1 or 4 radio. The opportunity costs are the same. Only the approach is different because we have provided data in 2 different formats. So you should be able to calculate the opportunity cost in any method, okay? If I give data in this format in the examination, you should be able to calculate opportunity cost. You should be able to do the same if data are given, if the information are given in this way. I will try to make the final exam easy as possible, but I don't guarantee it. Okay. Okay, that is about absolute advantage and comparative advantage. They explain the basis of international trade. They explain the basis for international trade. Absolute advantage has some weakness. Comparative advantage avoids that weakness. So the most preferred principle is comparative advantage. So you can expect a question in this area in the final exam. First, you will have to check the absolute advantage. Most probably, I will give an example like this, where one single country has the absolute advantage in producing both commodities. And then I will ask to compare the opportunity cost and come up with the answers to find which country has the comparative advantages. That kind of a question can come in the final exam. Okay, the next section is about protectionism. Protectionism is against the free trade. Free trade is challenged under protectionism policies. Protectionism is the placement of legal restraints on international trade. So if a government imposes legal restraints on international trade, those policies are called protectionist policies. And protectionist policies can come in different ways. Tariff is taxes on imports. Tariff is taxes on imports. The tariff is one form of protectionism. Also, governments can impose quotas on imports. Also, governments can grant or provide subsidies for exporters. And also sometimes bureaucratic barriers also can act as protectionist policies, protectionism. So tariffs are the taxes or the duties that impose on the imports of goods and services, which reduces the demand for imported goods and services. Because of tariffs, price of imported commodities will rise, like a normal tax. When a government imposes tariffs on imports, prices of imported goods and services will increase. When price increases, what happens? Demand for imported goods and services will reduce. Demand for imported goods and services will reduce. Then local producers will be beneficial. Due to taxes. Imports will go down, so local manufacturers will be able to increase their production and they can earn higher revenues, so that is beneficial for the local manufacturers. Tariffs are targeted to benefit local manufacturers. Due to tariffs, import demand of goods and services will go down. Quotas are the restrictions on the volume. Government can restrict from this commodity. In this year, we can the importers can import only this much of amount. Likewise, governments can restrict the volume of imports of goods and services during a particular time period. So those are called quotas. Quotas are also targeted to benefits of to benefit the local manufacturers, to provide benefits to local manufacturers. Because of quotas, imports will go down. Then the local manufacturers can increase their production and supply sufficient amounts of quantities in the market to earn a higher revenue. Subsidies, here the subsidies are provided to exporters. So because of export subsidies, they will have an advantage. They can charge a lower price because of export subsidies. Exporters can charge a lower price. So because of the lower price, exporters will be competitive in the international market because of their lower price. So because of their lower price, they become competitive and they will have sufficient demand in the international market because of the lower price. So subsidies, export subsidies are provided for the benefit of the exporters, for the benefit of the exporters. So these are three types of protectionism: tariff, quota, and subsidy. There are other forms of protectionism as well. These are kind of major protectionist policies. Despite the obvious gains made by trade, all countries try to protect domestic industries. Yes, of course, international trade gains in terms of consumption and production, but violating the free trade principles, each and every country adhere protectionist policies in order to protect and also to promote domestic industries. That is the purpose of protectionism, to protect and to promote domestic industries is the target, is the aim of protectionism. Protectionist measures run counter to the principle of competitive advantage, where countries specialize in the goods with the lowest opportunity cost and then trade goods with the other countries. So, your protectionist measures, it is against the competitive advantage. Competitive advantage comes from the lowest opportunity cost in a free market environment without any government intervention. But due to protectionist measures, the actual opportunity cost will be distorted, and then the competitive advantage principle will be challenged. As a result, free trade policy is also challenged under protectionism. So, if a country moving from current trade environment to free trade environment, then that country should lower protectionist policies as much as they can. So if a country is moving from current trade environment to a free trade environment, that country should mitigate protectionist policies or protectionist barriers to the least level possible. That is about protectionism. And there are advantages of protectionism, and those are the key arguments in favor of protectionism. Protectionism promotes infant industries. Protectionism protects infant industries from unfair competition. Protectionism protects infant industries from unfair competition. If let's say there is an automobile manufacturer. It's an infant industry. Still, it's an infant industry. They are at the initial stages of production. They don't have advanced technology. They don't have enough investment. So it's kind of an infant industry in Sri Lanka. An infant automobile manufacturer. To promote this infant industry, to promote this infant manufacturer who is still in the early stage of their growth, the government can impose higher tariffs, or the government can impose import quotas. Then automobile imports from other countries like Japan will be limited. Automobile imports to Sri Lanka from countries like Japan will be limited. So this infant industry can increase its output and sell their product in the local market at least. Because of lower imports, domestic people also will demand automobile items from this manufacturer. So it will be beneficial for the automobile firm, this infant industry, and subsequently this automobile industry will grow to a larger scale automobile manufacturer. So that kind of support will be given under protectionist policies. And also it helps to protect strategic industries. For example, in Sri Lanka, textile industry, garment industry is kind of a strategic industry because textile industry is the single industry that generates the largest export revenue to Sri Lanka. Textile industry is the largest industry that generates. Textile industry is the industry that generates the largest foreign exchange income to Sri Lanka in terms of exports. Therefore, textile industry is kind of a strategic industry in Sri Lanka. To protect it from unfavorable competition coming from abroad, Sri Lankan government can impose tariffs on textile. For example, the Sri Lankan government can introduce, for example, export subsidy. Because of export subsidy, Sri Lankan government exporters can sell their product at lower price. So Sri Lankan garments will be more competitive in the international market. So they will receive huge demand. From importers. Therefore, Sri Lankan government industry is protected against competition coming from other countries like Bangladesh and some other African countries. They are also moving towards garment industry. The garment industry in those countries are growing even faster than Sri Lanka. So there is a huge competition in the international market for Sri Lankan garment manufacturers. To protect them from that competition, government can provide export subsidies to the textile industry. So their prices will be lower. Sri Lankan garment prices will be lower. Then Sri Lankan garments will be more competitive in the international market and will receive huge demand from other countries. That is about the protection of strategic industries. Also, protectionist policies can be introduced to protect against import dumping. Import dumping is a form of predatory pricing. Predatory means going to capture a market with a lower price. Let's say there is a monopoly. That monopoly has the advantage of lower average cost. Average cost will be very low in this monopoly because of large scale of production, so that they can produce they can sell their products at a lower price. They can produce at a lower price. Let's say this monopoly trying to approach a new market, and there are some existing manufacturers also. But their prices are little bit high. This monopoly, what they can do is they unethically reach this market with a very low price, so that these existing manufacturers, these existing suppliers will not be able to compete with this very low price, and they disappear in the market. They have to leave the market without facing this, by unable to face this competition. Since these existing firms are unable to face this competition coming from this very low price, they will quit the market. That is what we call predatory pricing. They are going to capture the entire market, by charging a very low price. So dumping is also kind of similar thing. Some internationally giant manufacturers can come to Sri Lanka with a very low price. So Sri Lankan manufacturers, they are of smaller scale. Their prices are a little bit higher. They cannot compete with this very low price. So because the international giant producer comes to Sri Lanka and charges a very low price, that will negatively affect on the performance, on the sales of these small manufacturers, so that they will quit the market, unable to face this competition. Therefore, to protect such predatory dumping, to protect such dumping activities by internationally large manufacturers, the government can impose some protectionist policies like high tariff. So if the government can impose high tariff over this giant manufacturer, then they won't be able to charge a very low price like this. Their price will be not that much low. Will be a little bit high even if they charge a very high tariff. Quota is also kind of such thing to avoid dumping activities. So that is why protectionist policies are needed. These are the three reasons why protectionist policies are needed. One is to protect infant industries, second one is to protect strategic industries, and the third one is to protect local industries against import dumping. Then the next section is about free trade agreements, FTAs. Free trade agreement is a pact between two or more nations to reduce barriers to imports and export among them. So through free trade agreements, the partnering countries try to reduce barriers in international trade. Under free trade policy, goods and services can be bought and sold across international borders with little or no government tariffs, quotas, subsidies, or prohibitions to inhibit their exchanges. Under free trade agreements, the governments, participating countries can avoid or minimize tariff. They can remove or minimize quotas. They can remove or minimize export subsidies or some other forms of prohibitions. The concept of free trade is the opposite of trade protectionism. Just as I told you earlier, free trade is the opposite concept of protectionism. Under free trade agreements, what the partnering countries try to do is they try to reduce protectionist policies. So these are the available free trade agreements that Sri Lanka has. You can refer to this. Sri Lanka has signed free trade agreements with India, Pakistan, Singapore, and is currently negotiating an FTA with Thailand. Sri Lanka also has some Sri Lankan exporters to the United States qualify for duty-free privileges under the US Generalized System of Reference Programs. The Singapore-Sri Lanka FTA was signed in 2018. FTAs with India and Pakistan cover only trade in goods, not trade in services. And Sri Lanka is a party to the agreement on South Asian Free Trade Agreements (AFTA) and the agreement on Asian Free Trade Area (AFTA). So there are some free trade agreements that Sri Lanka has signed for. I'm not going to ask you about the free trade agreements, what are the free trade agreements that Sri Lanka has signed with. I don't ask questions like that. They are too technical. Anyone can search web and get to know about those details. So commonly available data will not be checked in the final exam. So these are the pros and cons, the benefits and advantages and disadvantages of free trade agreements. You can leisurely read it out. And this section is about foreign exchange rate. Foreign exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of another currency. For example, Sri Lankan rupees per USD, Australian dollars per USD. So foreign exchange rate can be expressed between two currencies. Foreign exchange rate is expressed between two currencies. The price of one currency per unit of another currency. Price of one currency per unit of another currency. What is the foreign exchange rate between USD and LKR? Let's say it's 300 LKR. 1 USD exchange rate is price of one currency per unit of another currency. So let's say the exchange rate between LKR and USD is this 300 per USD. What does it mean? The price of USD, price of USD, price of one USD, price of one USD is 300 Sri Lankan rupees. Price of one USD is 300 Sri Lankan rupees. Price of one currency, that is USD, per units of another currency. Here is LKR. LKR. We can express the same thing in other way also. In other way around also. Price of one LKR. Price of one LKR. Price of one currency in terms of, not per, in terms of. Price of one currency in terms of units of another currency. So here, price of $1 is in terms of LKR, it's 300 LKR. Price of one LKR in terms of USD, price of one LKR in terms of USD is how much? Is how much? That is the reciprocal of this. Reciprocal of this. That is 1 over 300. 1 over 300, which is 0.003 something. So 1 LKR, the price of 1 LKR in terms of USD is 0.003 USD. So these are two ways of quoting the exchange rate. We can quote the exchange rate in two ways. These are the two ways. We give specific names to these two types of quotations. What is this quotation? This is direct quote. This is direct quote. Direct quotation. This is indirect quotation. Direct quotation is, if we express the exchange rate as number of units of home currency, that is the local currency, per 1 unit of foreign currency, that is the direct quotation. So here it's number of LKR per 1 unit of USD. So from the point of view of Sri Lanka, from the perspective of Sri Lanka, local currency is LKR, foreign currency is USD. So if we express the exchange rate as number of local currency per 1 unit of the foreign currency, that is the direct quotation. If we express LKR, 1 USD equals 300 LKR, then that is direct quotation. If we express the exchange rate as number of units of foreign currency per 1 unit of home currency or local currency, then that is indirect quotation. The second example, the second way of exchange rate, which is 0.003 USD per 1 LKR, is in indirect quotation. It's in indirect quotation. So this is about appreciation or depreciation of LKR. When one currency is appreciating, let's say LKR is appreciating, the other currency will depreciate. That is, USD will depreciate. When LKR is depreciating, USD will appreciate. So if we are talking about the exchange rate between two currencies like LKR and USD, if LKR is appreciating, USD depreciates. If LKR is depreciating, LKR appreciates. Sorry, if LKR depreciates, USD appreciates. So here it says, in the first point, USD, 1 USD equals 200 LKR. The same thing, 1 LKR equals 0.005 USD. The second exchange rate, 1 USD equals 250 LKR. The same thing in LKR, 1 LKR equals 0.004. Thirdly, 1 USD equals 300 LKR. In other words, in the same way, 1 LKR equals 0.003. So what has happened to USD and what has happened to LKR? The price of LKR in terms of the foreign currency, in terms of USD, has the value increased or decreased? Price of LKR has increased or decreased in terms of USD. Price of LKR in terms of USD has decreased. So there is a depreciation. In LKR because the price of LKR in terms of USD has fallen from 0.005 to 0.004 to 0.003. It has fallen. So LKR has weakened. That means LKR has depreciated. Similarly, check the price of USD in terms of LKR. The price of USD in terms of LKR has increased. Initially, 1 USD was priced to 200 LKR, and finally, 1 USD is priced to 300 LKR. So the price of USD in terms of LKR has increased. That is, US dollar has strengthened. US dollar has strengthened. That means USD has appreciated. US dollar has appreciated. The opposite is mentioned in this figure. The price of LKR has increased in terms of USD, so LKR has appreciated. On the other hand, the price of USD in terms of LKR has fallen. Therefore, there is a depreciation in USD. There is a depreciation in USD. That is about appreciation and depreciation. In other words, weakening or strengthening of currencies. And this is how the exchange rate is determined in free market situation. Such a setting is called a floating exchange rate. Floating exchange rate. Exchange rate is determined in the exchange market with the forces, with the interaction of demand and supply forces. So at the original supply S1 and with the original demand D1, the exchange rate is 300 LKR per USD. The vertical axis shows the exchange rate. Horizontal axis shows the quantity of USD. Here we are talking about the exchange market of USD and LKR. We are talking about the exchange market, foreign exchange market of USD and LKR. Therefore, we have put quantity of USD traded on the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis shows the exchange rate in direct quote. In direct quote. If it is indirect quote, that means number of USD per LKR, then the horizontal axis should represent quantity of LKR. Okay. If here we mention the indirect quote on the vertical axis, horizontal axis should represent quantity of LKR. But here we have shown the direct quote. Therefore, the horizontal axis represents the USD. So here, at the original supply and original demand, foreign exchange rate between LKR and USD is 300 LKR per USD. Then assume there is an increase in supply. What kind of changes will derive this rightward shift in supply curve? Give a reason for this increase in supply of USD. How the USD supply will increase? For example, let's say tourist arrivals increase to Sri Lanka. Tourist arrivals increase to Sri Lanka. Tourists bring USD when they are traveling Sri Lanka. They bring USD. So in exchange market, foreign exchange, dollar supply, USD supply increases. That is one reason why this supply, this rightward shift in supply curve has occurred. So as a result, what happens? Exchange rate falls. The direct forward exchange rate falls from 300 to 250. The quantity of USD traded has increased because tourists have brought more dollars to the country. Therefore, quantity of USD traded in the exchange market has increased. As a result, what has happened is exchange rate has fallen in direct quote. The price of USD in terms of LKR has fallen. That means USD has depreciated. On the other hand, LKR has appreciated. LKR has appreciated. Similarly, there is a leftward shift in the supply curve of foreign exchange. What kind of reasons will bring this rightward shift? What will cause this rightward shift? A decrease in supply. For example, a decrease in exports. decreasing exports. When Sri Lanka exports goods and services to other countries, they will receive USD in exchange. But when exports fall, USD supply also will fall. USD supply falls. That's why we have this leftward shift in supply curve. As a result, what happens is exchange rate increases in direct quote. The price of USD in terms of LKR increases. That means USD appreciates. USD appreciates. On the other hand, LKR depreciates. So this is about a shifting demand. Demand has increased in the foreign exchange market. Demand for USD. Demand for USD has increased. What is the reason? What is the reason for this? Why people demand USD? For example, to import commodities. Let's say import demand increases, so importers tend to demand more dollar because they have to settle the payments for imports in dollars. When import demand increases, demand for USD also will increase. That's why we have experienced this rightward shift in the demand curve. So as a result, what happens is exchange rate falls, the price of USD in terms of LKR has decreased. That means USD has depreciated. USD has depreciated. On the other hand, LKR has appreciated. LKR has appreciated. The next picture shows a leftward shift in the demand curve. Why the demand for USD decreases? Demand for USD decreases. Again, similarly, when import demand decreases, demand for USD decreases. As a result, what has happened to the exchange rate? The price of USD in terms of LKR has increased. That means USD has appreciated. When USD appreciates, LKR depreciates. LKR depreciates. When LKR appreciates, who will be benefited? When LKR appreciates, who will be benefited? LKR is appreciated means the price of LKR in terms of a foreign currency, when LKR appreciates, price of LKR in terms of foreign currency, increases. Price of LKR in terms of a foreign currency, let's say USD, in terms of USD increases. And the price of USD in terms of LKR decreases. When price of LKR in terms of USD increases, importers, the exporters of Sri Lankan goods, this is Sri Lanka. For simplicity, let's assume USD is the country of USA. The trade happens between Sri Lanka and the US. Importers from the US who exports Sri Lankan commodities. That means Sri Lankan exports. US residents find Sri Lankan commodities more expensive. US residents find Sri Lankan commodities, Sri Lankan goods more expensive because now the price of LKR has gone up. Therefore, the prices of Sri Lankan goods will be more expensive for the US residents. Therefore, what happens is US residents will demand Sri Lankan goods less. US residents will demand Sri Lankan goods less. Therefore, Sri Lanka's exports to the US will go down. Sri Lanka's exports to the US will go down. At the same time, there are some Sri Lankan residents who consume goods and services from the US, goods and services produced in the US. Sri Lankan residents find US goods cheaper. Why? The price of USD has fallen. As a result, Sri Lankan residents find US goods cheaper. So Sri Lankans will demand US goods more. Demand for US goods from Sri Lankan residents will go up. So the Sri Lankan imports from the US will go up in this case. So from one hand, Sri Lanka's exports to the US will go down. On the other hand, Sri Lanka's imports from the US will go up. When exports decrease and when imports increase, what happens is net export will go down. Because net export is export minus import. Export go down, imports go up. So as a result, net export will go down. Net export value will reduce. That is what happens when LKR appreciates and when USD depreciates. The opposite will happen when LKR depreciates and when USD appreciates. Net export, we can give another name, trade balance. Trade balance is another name for net exports. So when LKR appreciates and USD depreciates, trade balance will worsen. Trade balance will get worsened. Trade balance is worsened means what? If the current trade balance is negative, the deficit will further expand. The deficit will further expand. If trade balance is positive, if trade balance is currently positive, sometimes it will move to a negative value. That is what we say, trade balance is getting worsened. And when LKR depreciates and when USD appreciates, what happens? Sri Lanka and US. US residents find Sri Lankan exports cheaper. Therefore, Sri Lankan US residents will demand more Sri Lankan commodities, more Sri Lankan goods. Therefore, Sri Lanka's exports to US will go up. On the other hand, Sri Lankan residents will find US goods expensive, more expensive. As a result, Sri Lankan residents will demand US goods less. And what happens is imports from US to Sri Lanka will go down. When exports are increasing, when imports are decreasing, what happens to trade balance? Exports are increasing and imports are falling. Trade balance will increase. Trade balance will be favorable. Trade balance will favorably increase. Trade balance will improve. So that is how trade balance is affected due to the appreciation or depreciation in currencies. That is the end.